War movies lie, and historians know it. So which films actually got war 100% right? Tactics, strategy, command structure, the chaos, the mistakes without Hollywood fantasy. Today, we're breaking down the only 13 war movies military historians say are brutally accurate, and exposing the ones you thought were realistic but aren't. Some of these will surprise you, and one legendary classic might not survive the evidence. For years, war films made combat look organized, clean, almost choreographed. Then Saving Private Ryan detonated that illusion in the first 20 minutes. The Omaha beach landing sequence is not inspired by history. It is constructed from after-action reports, veteran interviews, ballistic studies, and battlefield geography. Military historians consistently point to this opening as the closest cinematic approximation of amphibious assault conditions ever filmed. The chaos isn't random, it's procedural. Soldiers exit Higgins boats in tight formation and immediately break formation under machine gun fire. That detail matters. In real landings, discipline disintegrated within seconds. Units were shredded. Officers were killed early. Communication collapsed. The film reflects that collapse precisely. The camera stays low because that's where survival happens. Notice the equipment accuracy. M1 Garand cycle properly. B. AR gunners move with realistic weight distribution. Radio operators are burdened and exposed. The sound design mirrors documented accounts, concussive artillery disorientation, the temporary deafness effect, shouted commands that go unheard. Even the small details align with the historical record. Soldiers cling to beach obstacles for cover. Engineers struggle to clear wire under fire. Casualties don't die heroically. They bleed out confused, disoriented, unfinished. Historians often highlight one overlooked detail: hesitation, not cowardice, human hesitation. Troops freeze. Some fail to advance. Others surge forward recklessly. That uneven reaction mirrors battlefield psychology studies conducted decades later. The film understands that fear is not cinematic, it is paralyzing. Beyond Omaha, the patrol mission structure remains tactically grounded. The squad moves cautiously. They debate command decisions. They argue over risk versus objective value. That argument reflects a real military tension: mission priority versus troop preservation. No character behaves like an invincible action hero. Even the infamous knife fight near the end is not stylized brutality. It reflects the grim proximity of close-quarters combat. Slow, strained, exhausted. There is no music swelling to guide emotion, only breath and friction. Military advisors who worked on the film have noted that Spielberg insisted on tactical authenticity even when it slowed pacing. Reload speeds were corrected, rank behavior was adjusted. Dialogue was rewritten to reflect actual chain-of-command language. But here's the deeper reason historians defend this film. It does not glorify the operation. It contextualizes it. D-Day is presented as strategically necessary, yet horrifyingly costly. There is no myth-making tone. Victory feels expensive. Survival feels accidental. Many World War II veterans reportedly struggled to watch the opening scene. That reaction alone says something profound. Saving Private Ryan did not invent realism in war cinema. It reset the standard, and for many historians, it remains the benchmark every other combat film is measured against and rarely equals. If most war films show battles, Das Boot shows waiting, and waiting, in submarine warfare, is the battle. Set aboard a German U-boat during the Second World War, this film abandons spectacle in favor of suffocation. Military historians routinely praise it as the most accurate portrayal of naval submarine operations ever captured on film. The claustrophobia is not exaggerated, it's researched. The submarine interior was reconstructed with obsessive fidelity. Narrow passageways, shared bunks, old machinery packed into impossible proximity. Crew members move in choreographed inconvenience because that is how U-boats operated. There was no personal space. No privacy, no relief. Watch how the command hierarchy functions. Orders pass through precise channels. The captain calculates depth adjustments with tension but not theatrics. Crew members respond instantly not because they're fearless, but because hesitation underwater is lethal. Torpedo loading takes time, and the film lets it take time. That decision frustrates impatient viewers, but historians applaud it. Real submarine engagements were slow calculations. Attack vectors required geometry, patience, and nerve. You didn't lock on and fire. You plotted intercept angles under immense pressure. The sonar pings are not dramatic flourishes, they are psychological weapons. Submarine veterans have described depth charge sequences in Das Boot as disturbingly authentic. The hull creaks, bolts strain, sweat beads under red lighting. No one delivers heroic speeches. They wait for the next explosion and hope the structure holds. One historically respected detail is morale fluctuation. At sea, confidence rises and collapses unpredictably. Early patrol optimism dissolves into fatigue. Supplies dwindle. Hygiene deteriorates. Small tensions become dangerous. The film tracks that emotional arc with documentary precision. Even enemy encounters avoid exaggeration. The British convoy escorts behave strategically. U-boat commanders aren't depicted as comic villains or super geniuses. They are professionals trapped in attrition warfare. The political dimension is also restrained. The film does not sanitize Nazi Germany, nor does it turn the crew into ideological caricatures. Instead, it presents them as sailors executing duty inside a morally compromised regime, a nuance historians consider essential. Uniforms, equipment labels, navigation instruments, all period accurate. The pacing is deliberate because submarine warfare was deliberate. Most importantly, the film rejects triumph. There is no celebratory victory arc. Success feels temporary. Survival feels uncertain. Every mission concludes with the awareness that the next patrol could be fatal. That existential dread reflects historical truth. German U-boat casualty rates were catastrophic. When historians discuss authenticity in war cinema, Das Boot consistently enters the conversation near the top. Not because it is loud, not because it is patriotic, but because it understands something rare. War is not constant action. Sometimes it is steel walls, recycled air, and the sound of pressure closing in. Most war films give you a protagonist to admire. Come and See gives you a child and takes away his childhood in front of you. Military historians and Eastern Front scholars frequently cite this film as one of the most disturbingly accurate depictions of Nazi anti-partisan operations in Belarus during World War II. The events shown are not exaggerated fever dreams. Many are drawn directly from documented massacres carried out by Einsatzgruppen and SS units. The horror is procedural. Villages are rounded up methodically. Civilians are corralled. Soldiers move with administrative efficiency. There is no dramatic orchestral framing, and no cinematic speechifying. The violence unfolds with a matter-of-fact brutality that mirrors survivor testimonies. What makes historians defend this film is its refusal to mythologize resistance. The partisan fighters are not elite commandos. They are under-equipped, disorganized, and frequently terrified. Weapons malfunction. Plans unravel. Leadership feels improvised. That reflects the fragmented nature of Soviet partisan units in occupied territories. The German forces are not cartoon villains either. They behave like occupying troops conditioned by ideology and impunity. Their cruelty is casual, bureaucratic, and chillingly routine. That tone aligns with archival records describing how entire communities were annihilated as retaliatory policy. Even environmental detail matters here. The mud, the smoke, the ruined barns, the suffocating forests. Historians have noted that the landscape itself feels authentic to Belarusian terrain. Warfare on the Eastern Front was inseparable from geography. Forest cover provided both refuge and trap. The film also captures psychological degradation with unnerving accuracy. The young protagonist does not transform into a heroic avenger. He deteriorates. His hearing falters after bombardment. His expression ages decades within days. That accelerated trauma matches studies on civilian survivors of mass violence. One of the most historically praised elements is the depiction of village extermination. The sequence does not rush. It lingers in confusion and disbelief before catastrophe closes in. Survivors of similar massacres described the same surreal disbelief, the moment when normalcy dissolves and comprehension fails. There is no battlefield glory, no tactical victory, only annihilation. Historians value Come and See because it confronts a truth many war films avoid. Genocide was not chaotic rage. It was structured policy carried out with discipline, and discipline, in this context, is what makes it unbearable. Urban warfare rarely looks like the movies. It looks like fragmentation. Military historians and veterans frequently reference Black Hawk Down as one of the most tactically faithful portrayals of modern infantry combat ever put to screen. The film reconstructs the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu with granular attention to unit movement, radio protocol, and the cascading failures that defined the mission. The operation begins with confidence. Delta Force operators and Army Rangers deploy with rehearsed precision. And just helicopter insertion sequences mirror real procedures, fast ropes, perimeter establishment, immediate target acquisition. Nothing is stylized for flair. Then the first helicopter falls, and everything fractures. What historians emphasize is how accurately the film portrays the breakdown of coordination. Maps become unreliable, convoys get lost, command struggles to piece together incomplete information. In real urban combat, situational awareness disintegrates quickly. Communication is constant, but clarity is scarce. Radio chatter overlaps. Orders are repeated. Confusion spreads through fragmented updates. That relentless auditory pressure reflects authentic battlefield conditions described by participants. The film also avoids a common cinematic shortcut: omniscient strategy. No one character sees the whole battlefield. That leaders operate with partial data. Decisions are reactive, sometimes flawed. That uncertainty aligns with documented after-action analyses. Weapon handling remains grounded. Soldiers reload under stress. Suppressive fire is used to maneuver rather than to look impressive. Casualties are treated in improvised conditions. Medics prioritize airway and bleeding control exactly as doctrine dictates. One crucial historically praised detail is the depiction of extraction difficulty. Getting wounded soldiers out of a hostile city proves more complex than neutralizing the original target. The film underscores a military reality. Exfiltration is often more dangerous than insertion. There is no grand tactical triumph. There is endurance. Some critics argue the film minimizes Somali civilian perspective, and historians acknowledge that debate. But strictly in terms of American tactical procedure, the reconstruction is meticulous. When veterans speak about this film, they often mention recognition rather than entertainment. They recognize the posture, the exhaustion, the radio cadence, and recognition in war cinema is the highest form of authenticity. Civil War films often shrink battles into personal drama. Gettysburg expands them back into geography. Military historians consistently commend this film for its adherence to battlefield layout, command decisions, and documented correspondence during the three-day engagement in 1863. It is less a movie than a moving tactical map. Troop formations are not random clusters. They align with historical brigade positions. Infantry lines advance in disciplined ranks. Artillery placements correspond to recorded terrain advantages. Even the pacing of assaults reflects the slow, grinding tempo of 19th century warfare. Historians especially praise the portrayal of Pickett's charge. The advance across open ground is not romanticized. It is prolonged, exposed, painfully inevitable. That extended sequence mirrors eyewitness accounts describing the hopeless distance Confederate troops had to cross under Union artillery fire. Dialogue often draws directly from letters and memoirs. Commanders debate strategy using language rooted in actual historical record. There is no modern slang inserted for accessibility. That choice preserves period authenticity. The film also captures the rigidity of Civil War command structure. Orders move down formal chains. That miscommunication is limited not by incompetence, but by the speed of horseback couriers and line-of-sight signaling. That logistical constraint shaped outcomes, and the film respects it. Uniform accuracy and regimental flags are meticulously researched. Reenactors were used in large numbers to replicate authentic formations. That decision enhances scale without distorting tactics. Perhaps most importantly, Gettysburg avoids rewriting the battle's outcome for drama. It presents the Confederate defeat as the consequence of strategic overreach and terrain disadvantage, not destiny or cinematic fate. The camera frequently pulls back to emphasize scale, because scale was the story. Historians appreciate this restraint. The film does not compress days into minutes. It allows events to unfold with operational patience. There are no surprise ambush twists, no fictional last-minute rescues, just documented history, reconstructed with fidelity. In a genre often tempted to simplify, Gettysburg chooses complexity, and that choice is precisely why scholars continue to defend it. If most war films choose a side, Torah chooses documentation. Military historians frequently describe this film as one of the most structurally accurate reconstructions of the attack on Pearl Harbor ever produced. What separates it from patriotic retellings is its dual perspective. American command decisions and Japanese planning sequences unfold in parallel, mirroring the real intelligence failures and strategic calculations on both sides. The Japanese carrier task force is not depicted as reckless or theatrical. It is methodical. Strike planning is shown through briefings, reconnaissance reports, and disciplined aviation coordination. Aircraft launch procedures follow historically documented deck choreography. Timing between attack waves aligns closely with archival records. On the American side, confusion dominates. Radar warnings are misinterpreted. Bureaucratic hesitation slows response. Command officers debate incomplete information. That procedural breakdown reflects official investigations conducted after the attack. The film refuses to simplify failure into villainy or incompetence. Instead, it highlights systemic misjudgment. Historians often praise the attention to logistical realism. Ships are positioned accurately within the harbor. Aircraft types correspond to period deployment. Even the staggered destruction sequence matches verified impact timelines. Old battleships do not explode like gasoline bombs. They rupture under structural stress. There is no invented hero racing to save the day. No single character alters history. The attack feels inevitable not because it is dramatized, but because it is reconstructed. One particularly respected detail is the restraint in dialogue. Strategic decisions are discussed in measured tones, consistent with military protocol. Emotional outbursts are rare. The tragedy unfolds without cinematic manipulation. The film also avoids retroactive moral framing. Japanese commanders are not caricatured. American officers are not omniscient. Both sides operate within flawed intelligence environments. That nuance aligns with modern historical consensus regarding Pearl Harbor's complexity. When historians compare Pearl Harbor films, bet this one consistently ranks highest for procedural integrity. It is not the most explosive. It is not the most sentimental. It is the most disciplined. And discipline in historical storytelling is rare. Operation Market Garden has often been summarized as bold ambition undone by reality. A Bridge Too Far refuses to romanticize that ambition. Military historians commend this film for portraying the Allied airborne assault into the Netherlands with granular attention to command miscalculation, logistical overreach, and fragmented coordination. The scale is expansive, yet the narrative resists simplifying the operation into heroism. Paratrooper deployment sequences emphasize dispersion. Units land far from intended drop zones. Equipment is lost. Radio communication falters. Those errors mirror documented problems that plagued the real mission. The film highlights a crucial historical truth. Optimism distorted planning. Intelligence warnings about German armored presence were downplayed. The timeline relied on perfect conditions. Supply lines stretched thin. Historians consistently reference these structural weaknesses, and the film embeds them into its pacing. Combat itself feels methodical rather than sensational. Bridges are defended through layered resistance. Armored columns advance cautiously. Infantry clear buildings room by room. There is no exaggerated choreography. One of the most respected aspects is the portrayal of British forces trapped at Arnhem. The encirclement tightens gradually. Ammunition runs low. Reinforcements fail to arrive. That slow realization of isolation reflects firsthand accounts from survivors. Commanders argue, but they argue within doctrine. Blame is not screamed. It is implied through operational strain. The film also refrains from altering the outcome for morale. Market Garden fails, and it fails visibly. Historians value this honesty. the defeat is not reframed as symbolic victory. It remains what it was, a costly gamble that did not succeed. Scale is used to emphasize complexity. Multiple national forces operate with overlapping objectives. Coordination struggles become the narrative engine. By the final act, exhaustion outweighs momentum, and that fatigue mirrors the historical record. World War I is often misremembered as cavalry charges and patriotic speeches. This adaptation dismantles that myth with industrial precision. Military historians have praised the film's depiction of trench warfare mechanics, not simply the mud and misery, but the operational rhythms of artillery barrages, infantry advances, and attritional stalemate. The opening sequence establishes tone immediately. Uniforms are stripped from fallen soldiers, cleaned, and reassigned to new recruits. That logistical recycling reflects documented resource scarcity late in the war. Trench construction appears historically grounded. Duckboards line flooded walkways, sandbags sag, rats infest supplies. These details are not aesthetic choices. They mirror battlefield photography and written accounts. Artillery dominates, and the dominance is accurate. Most casualties during the First World War resulted from bombardment, not close combat. The film's relentless shelling sequences echo statistical reality. Infantry charges are not swift heroics. They are chaotic surges into machine gun fire and barbed wire. Soldiers stumble, momentum collapses, survivors retreat in disarray. Historians consistently emphasize how rarely frontal assaults succeeded, and the film honors that futility. Command structure is portrayed with layered contrast. Frontline officers scramble for survival. Rear echelon, leadership debates, negotiations, and pride. That divide reflects documented tension between strategic leadership and trench-level experience. One historically significant inclusion is the depiction of armistice negotiations running parallel to ongoing fighting. The war does not pause for diplomacy. Men continue dying while terms are discussed. That cruel overlap aligns with historical timeline reality. There is no triumphant arc, no redemption through victory, only exhaustion, erosion, and inevitability. Historians defend this film not because it is dramatic, but because it is relentless. It understands that the First World War was less about maneuver and more about grinding attrition. And attrition is not cinematic, it is suffocating, which is precisely why this portrayal resonates with scholarly accuracy. Most war films end with victory. Downfall begins with collapse. Military historians consistently describe this film as one of the most meticulously reconstructed portrayals of leadership disintegration ever captured on screen. Set inside Hitler's bunker during the final days of the Third Reich, the film draws heavily from eyewitness accounts, old personal diaries, and post-war interrogations. The tension is not battlefield chaos, it is bureaucratic decay. Orders are issued to phantom divisions that no longer exist. Maps are updated with movements that will never happen. Staff officers relay information with procedural discipline, even as reality fractures around them. Historians often highlight how accurately the film portrays the rigid hierarchy inside the bunker. Protocol remains intact long after strategic coherence collapses. Subordinates stand at attention. Salutes are exchanged. Reports are delivered formally. That adherence to structure, even amid defeat, reflects documented testimony from survivors. The portrayal of Hitler himself is restrained rather than theatrical. His physical deterioration aligns with medical descriptions from the period: tremors, stooped posture, exhaustion. His mood swings are abrupt, yet grounded in recorded conversations. There is no exaggerated villain monologue. Instead, there is denial layered over crumbling authority. One of the film's most historically praised elements is its refusal to dramatize the external war. Explosions are distant. Artillery thuds echo through concrete walls. The war is heard more than seen. That perspective matches bunker conditions during the Soviet advance on Berlin. Staff disagreements unfold with chilling normalcy. Generals debate retreat versus symbolic resistance. Civilian officials cling to loyalty narratives. Secretaries type final communications while knowing the regime is ending. The administrative machinery continues operating even as the city burns. Historians also commend the depiction of fragmented command. Orders issued from the bunker rarely reach the front intact. Units are isolated. Coordination disintegrates. The film mirrors the documented communication breakdown that defined Germany's final weeks. There is no climactic reversal, only inevitability. Suicides occur with procedural finality. Loyalty is expressed as ritual rather than conviction. The Third Reich does not fall in spectacle, it dissolves in concrete silence. That restraint is why historians defend downfall so strongly. It reconstructs not heroism, not battlefield glory, but the anatomy of collapse. And collapse, historically, is rarely loud. D-Day has been dramatized many times. Few films have attempted to document it at scale the way The Longest Day did. Military historians frequently cite this production as one of the earliest large-scale efforts to reconstruct the Normandy invasion, using extensive consultation with Allied veterans, battlefield planners, and archival material. Its commitment to multinational perspective sets it apart. The invasion is not filtered through a single protagonist. Instead, the film tracks American, British, French, and German viewpoints in parallel. That structural decision mirrors the complexity of Operation Overlord, which was not one assault, but a coordinated mosaic of airborne drops, amphibious landings, and resistant sabotage. Airborne sequences reflect documented misdrops. Paratroopers land far from objectives. Units regroup under confusion. Bridges and roadways become contested terrain. Historians often praise the film's emphasis on navigational errors and scattered deployment realities that shaped the early hours of June 6th. German command response is portrayed with procedural realism. Field officers debate whether the invasion is a diversion. Authorization delays ripple through the chain of command. Armored divisions await clearance. That hesitation aligns closely with historical records regarding German uncertainty about the main Allied thrust. The film also avoids compressing geography. Beach sectors are treated distinctly. Utah is not Omaha. Sword is not Juneau. Each landing unfolds with its own tactical challenges. That separation reflects the actual operational fragmentation of the invasion. Combat itself is comparatively restrained by modern standards, but within its era, weapon handling, uniform detail, and landing craft design were carefully researched. Veterans who advised the production insisted on preserving authentic procedure wherever possible. One historically significant strength is the portrayal of logistics. Engineers clear obstacles. Naval bombardment precedes landing waves. Communication lags create vulnerability. The invasion feels orchestrated, yet fragile. There is no singular heroic figure who wins the day. Victory emerges from coordination and costly persistence. Historians respect The Longest Day not because it is emotionally overwhelming, but because it was among the first films to treat D-Day as an operational event rather than a cinematic myth. It understands scale, and scale was the story. The early Vietnam War is often misunderstood through later political lenses. We Were Soldiers narrows its focus to the Battle of Ia Drang in 1965, and military historians frequently commend it for capturing the tactical realities of early air cavalry doctrine. The film begins not with firefights, but with preparation. Training sequences emphasize discipline, communication, and unit cohesion. Helicopter mobility is treated as doctrine rather than spectacle. Air assault operations unfold according to historically documented procedures. Insertion into landing zone X-ray reflects recorded timelines. Troops deploy rapidly, perimeters are established, defensive arcs are formed. There is no cinematic improvisation. The choreography mirrors after-action reports. Historians often highlight the depiction of North Vietnamese forces as organized and capable. They are not faceless adversaries. They maneuver strategically. They exploit terrain. They adapt to American firepower. That portrayal aligns with historical assessments of the People's Army of Vietnam's tactical discipline. Combat is chaotic, but not stylized. Soldiers reload frantically. Casualties disrupt formation integrity. Commanders adjust positioning under fire. Air support is requested with urgency, but not omnipotence. One of the film's most respected elements is its portrayal of leadership under pressure. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore's decisions are shown as calculated yet uncertain. He does not possess supernatural awareness. He reacts to evolving threats using limited information exactly as battlefield commanders must. Artillery and close air support are integrated realistically. Fire missions require coordination. Danger-close strikes carry visible risk. The film does not simplify air power into guaranteed salvation. Historians also appreciate the acknowledgement of casualty notification. Scenes depicting families receiving news reinforce the human cost without drifting into melodrama. The battle concludes not with triumph, but with endurance. Ayadrang was a proving ground for air mobility tactics and a warning about the war's future intensity. We Were Soldiers respects both truths. It does not editorialize, it reconstructs. And reconstruction, when accurate, carries more weight than spectacle. Naval warfare in the Napoleonic era is often romanticized as cannon smoke and heroic broadsides. Master and Commander strips that romance down to rope tension, wind calculation, and splintered wood. Military historians who specialize in 18th and early 19th century naval combat frequently praise this film for its extraordinary technical precision. The HMS Surprise is not a generic pirate ship. It behaves like a Royal Navy frigate of its class. Sail management is treated as survival science. Wind direction dictates strategy. Maneuvering requires geometry, not bravado. Cannons do not fire endlessly. Reload times are measured. Gun crews operate in drilled rhythm. Recoil physics are respected. The splintering wood caused by incoming cannonballs, historically one of the most lethal elements of naval combat, is shown in grim detail. Command authority functions within rigid hierarchy. Orders are given formally. Discipline is immediate. Punishments reflect Royal Navy regulations of the period. Even the subtle tension between captain and crew mirrors documented morale struggles during long voyages. One historically admired detail is medical procedure. Amputations are performed without melodrama. Infection risk is acknowledged. Naval surgeons operate with the tools and limitations of the era. These sequences reflect first-hand accounts from ship logs and medical journals. The film also respects strategic patience. Long stretches of pursuit unfold with minimal action. Ships track each other across vast ocean expanses using navigation instruments accurate to the period. That waiting frustrating to modern audiences mirrors real maritime campaigns. Historians particularly note the depiction of deception tactics. The surprise disguises itself, adjusts sails, and manipulates visual perception. Naval warfare in this era relied heavily on misdirection. The film integrates those tactics without exaggeration. Enemy forces are not incompetent caricatures. They are disciplined adversaries operating within comparable constraints. Engagement feels like calculated risk, not cinematic inevitability. Perhaps most importantly, the film avoids modern moral reframing. It portrays officers as products of their time, disciplined, pragmatic, occasionally severe. There is no forced contemporary sentimentality. Historians defend Master and Commander because it understands that naval warfare was a system. Wind, wood, iron, hierarchy, disease, isolation. Remove any one of those, and you lose authenticity. This film removes none. Some war films recreate battles. The Battle of Algiers reconstructs insurgency. Military historians and counterinsurgency scholars frequently call this film one of the most tactically accurate depictions of urban guerrilla warfare ever produced. So precise, in fact, that it has reportedly been screened in military institutions as a case study. The conflict unfolds inside narrow streets and crowded marketplaces. Bomb placement is calculated. Escape routes are pre-planned. Civilian density becomes tactical cover. The film's depiction of insurgent cell structure reflects documented FLN operational methods during the Algerian War. French paratroopers respond with procedural intensity. Checkpoints multiply. Intelligence networks expand. Interrogations are systematic. Commanders implement coordinated sweeps designed to dismantle insurgent infrastructure. Historians often highlight how accurately the film captures the mechanics of counterinsurgency surveillance, curfews, and psychological pressure. There is no cinematic exaggeration of scale. Explosions are contained. Casualties are disorienting rather than operatic. The urban environment dictates tempo. One of the most respected elements is the portrayal of moral ambiguity. the film does not simplify either side into pure villainy or virtue. Both insurgents and state forces operate with conviction and consequence. That neutrality aligns with historical analysis of asymmetrical warfare, where legitimacy and brutality intertwine. Tactical operations are portrayed with documentary restraint. Paratroopers move in coordinated formations. Intelligence leads to targeted raids. Informant networks collapse under pressure. But each strategic shift reflects historical records from the period. Historians often emphasize the film's structural honesty. The French achieve short-term tactical success. The insurgency is temporarily dismantled, yet the broader political struggle continues. That distinction between tactical victory and strategic failure mirrors modern counterinsurgency doctrine. The camera style enhances authenticity. Handheld sequences resemble archival footage. Non-professional actors contribute to documentary realism. The line between fiction and history blurs intentionally. There is no sweeping orchestral triumph, no final battlefield crescendo, only the understanding that urban conflict is cyclical. When military scholars discuss accurate portrayals of asymmetrical war, the Battle of Algiers is not merely mentioned, it is studied. And study, more than applause, is the highest endorsement historical cinema can receive. War films are everywhere. Accuracy is not. Out of hundreds of battlefield epics, only a handful survive serious historical scrutiny, not because they're loud, but because they respect procedure, consequence, and reality. These films didn't just recreate combat, they reconstructed systems, mistakes, fear, and human limits. Now, the real question is this: which classic war movie do you think historians would tear apart because some legends don't survive evidence?